Hi everyone, Jess Jurkovic here. Before Part 2 begins, I must issue a correction. In researching Part 1, I used the 2004 Pyramids of Mars DVD production subtitles, which state that Dudley Simpson actually performed this organ part. This was good enough for me. Viewers of the video brought to my attention that this might not be true, and through them we were able to determine that Simpson was not the performer. In fact, embarrassingly, Dudley Simpson states this himself in the 2009 documentary on his music. He states organist Leslie Pearson performed it. I have duly edited a few of my speeches in this video to avoid repeating the inaccuracy, which accounts for some slightly odd edits in this video in case you notice. Shoutouts to Gordon Webster, David Check of the Metabolist 2 podcast, and Gavin Reimel, all friends of the project. They put me in touch with the Who encyclopedias that are Richard Bignell and Paul Scoons, who were able to set me right. Although I am even more pained if I get a note wrong, I regret this error. Enjoy the video. For the first time since 1969, Dudley Simpson wrote music for pipe organ as part of his Doctor Who score. Considering this music is akin to ritualistic summoning of the devil or evil spirits, and various homages to horror movies in the period set story, I can't think of anything more effective. The script gives a description of the music to be heard, saying that it, quote, makes no musical sense. It is an attempt to create an atmosphere, a pitch of anarchy in which the normal laws of physics are suspended, unquote. Simpson realized, of course, that the music could not be completely atonal and still be effective, but neither could it be Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor. So let's look into the disturbed-sounding order of Simpson's music. It should be clear that most of the music is based on an 8-note cell of pitches, which is constantly transposed higher, a simple way of increasing intensity. This measure-long cell is based on downbeats of a repeated note, the root of the harmony, alternating with 4 lower notes. The first leap is to the consonant major third above the root. The second, however, is to a dissonant minor second or minor ninth. The third is to the fifth of the root, again, consonant. The fourth and final is down to the dissonant tritone. As you can hear, the first and third leaps add up to a happy major triad, but the second and fourth notes distinctly darken that sound. The cell is stated twice, first on B, then on C. Breaking up the cell statements is a held harmony on D, which on the surface is consonant with the perfect fifth above, but there are intruding foreign notes as well. It's as if Simpson willingly added wrong notes by, as I must perform them, pressing notes under the fat part of the extended thumb, the minor sixth, the major seventh, and the minor ninth. Above a sort of melody descending chromatically from the root to the fifth, but harmonized by parallel major sevenths. This is the first of several almost right but not right harmonies that Simpson uses to suggest the anarchy. It makes the music come off like a divinely inspired, if divine is quite the right word, improvisation, as if the awesome power and will of Sutekh is issuing forth through the willing vessel of Namin. 2 more measures of the cell sound on D and E, and this second phrase is again broken up by an almost right harmony, totaling an F augmented chord with added flat 9. For both this and the previous harmony, I must insert low bass notes representing the organ's foot pedals. These allow a third part in addition to the organist's 2 hands, but on the piano I have to add it either before or after. For the sake of rhythm, I decided after sounded best. The final sound of this section is another almost right chord, a major chord with a simultaneous major seventh and minor seventh, dispersed an octave apart. It is at this point that Namin tears himself away from the organ in a rage, verbally assailing Collins for interrupting him. Originally, I had composed one extra chord to try to connect this segment with the next scene of Namin performing. During my recent revision process, I hit upon an even better idea. As the Doctor and Warlock hide from Namin and the robot mummy, an organ fanfare wafts through the woods, and Namin instantly ends the search and heeds the siren's song. This fanfare is basically made of two chords, E major 7 and D minor major 7. However, Simpson uses tape effects to bend the organ's pitch as if it comes from a world with different laws of physics. The first chord actually begins bent up about a quarter tone, literally a note between the notes E and F on the piano. Obviously that and the pitch bending I could never replicate on piano, but I can attempt to imitate. My fake pitch bend comes from starting on F major 7, then a quiet pulse down a half step with a held damper pedal. The blurred sound quickly resolves with a reiteration of the E major 7 chord. The second D minor chord is in a higher register, and over about 10 seconds the pitch is bent upwards a whole step. Again, I must rely upon the damper pedal, and by lightly adding the same chords on D sharp and E, I imitate the pitch bend. This fanfare became the connective tissue between the first segment and the scene where Namin returns to the organ for commencement of the summoning ritual. This contrasting passage begins with a bellowing chord of 5 white piano keys in different registers. The dissonance comes primarily from a thick low register chord in the left hand and the half-step rub of the F in the right hand against the bass note E. Next, a new unison line in contrast to the cell of the first section. This is simply crawling half steps up and down, displaced sometimes by an octave. You'll hear in the performance that these octaves aren't always clean, and this is in fact a fairly accurate representation of the actual performance. Again, Simpson seems to represent Namin's ecstatic performance and otherworldly inspiration by allowing these wrong notes. Now, a new bellowing chord. Here, the left hand is actually a more traditional D half diminished chord, but the right hand adds color notes of the 11th and also a wrong perfect fifth clashing with the flatted fifth in the left hand. Another unison line, a whole step higher than earlier, is even messier than the first, and once again I try to represent that accurately as performed. The harmony peaks with a mostly quartal harmony, essentially B flat major 7 flat 5. But again, the right hand has a wrong note, B natural. It's possible that these wrong notes are actually overtones produced by the organ's timbre, but their sounds were too present for me to ignore. From here, the harmony seems to decay. 2 quartal chords begin collapsing into each other, making up unanalyzable dissonant harmonies. After these chords, in the program we cut suddenly to the Beware Sutekh scene, deafening in its stillness. The problem for me was that this made the piece I was trying to make very disjointed at this point. For when we later resume the organ, it returns to music of the first section. It just didn't make musical sense to me to jump from one to the other, whether without a break or after a moment's silence. As you know from my other transcriptions, I have been very lucky in always finding Simpson material to connect different segments together, and at most have fleshed out certain elements or had to make intelligent guesses. At this spot, however, there was no solution in my mind except, for the first time in the project, to compose. In order to fulfill my desire to have as little Jurkovic as possible in my Simpson transcriptions, I started by continuing the collapse of the 2 quartal chords, one more time in the same rhythm. Then a final dominant light chord, held while the earlier crawling half steps return, as if signaling the descent of the all-powerful. Finally, the falling octaves come to a halt, and by resolving on B, I achieved the connection I wanted. The climactic segment comes from a long scene leading to the cliffhanger of part 1, where, as the Doctor secretly watches, the ritual comes to a head, the music swirling in intensity. Suddenly, Namin realizes the organ is playing itself, and he rises to stand in front of a sarcophagus that slowly transforms into a time-space tunnel. By the end, the music reaches a distorted fever pitch, the tunnel producing strange sounds of its own, and we see a black helmeted figure who presently emerges from the tunnel as the room falls silent. Apart from my decision to arrange the original 8-note cell in double octaves this time, the music begins with a repetition of the first segment, though in fairness, most of the music in the program is about a quarter tone sharp than what you will hear me play. Once we reach the F augmented chord, the phrases continue similarly, rising further in pitch and gradually speeding up the tempo. Except for the very end of this segment, this doesn't sound much like tape distortion. Apart from some added oscillation and the overlaying of the tunnel sound effects, the cacophony grows as the organ resumes the cell on F sharp, then A flat, and the contrasting harmony is the same as the earlier one on D, transposed up to A flat. The fury continues with the cell again on B flat, then C, resolving to a screeching D minor major 7. In the program, as we see the helmeted figure traveling towards us, there is a low throbbing sound effect that slowly builds, and I tried to represent that throbbing with a rising cluster chord relentlessly ascending. Meanwhile, the screaming of the organ continues with more cells, the first distorting from C sharp to D, then up to E and F sharp, climaxing with 2 minor major 7 chords on A and B flat. The chaos dies away as the figure emerges from the tunnel. Because the fanfare is reused more than once in the rest of the story, in scenes where Sutekh communicates with his cadaverous instrument, the late Professor Scarman, as a coda to the piece, the same fanfare completes the descent. hope you enjoyed the scientific explanation of the chaos in episode 29, part 2 of the Dudley Simpson is Doctor Who project. Subscribe, like, share, and comment. See you next time.